And we're back with another episode of Holy Tissues. And today we're going to be discussing the film A Beautiful Mind, starring Russell Crowe, Jennifer Connelly, and Ed Harris. So again, to my left here is, again, Dimitri Katzman.
And to my right is my friend Hugh Hopkins.
So let's begin the discussion here. We're going to get right into it. So it's 2 years after the end of World War II in Princeton University, and Judd Hirsch is suggesting that Princeton needs new applicable war applications. Probably because the Cold War is looming, it's the end of World War II, there's still some loose ends to tie up in terms of code breaking. Mm-hmm. And they need new Einsteins, Judd Hirsch says. So we enter in on this rather befuddled, complicated man, Nash, right? John Nash. So he starts to realize, though, but he does acknowledge, so even early on, that people don't like him, and that he doesn't really like people, which I think is, for mathematicians, it can be a beneficial thing for someone who's searching for something mathematical, to look at everything in abstract and to strip away humanity.
Emotional side of it.
Emotional side of it, for absolute sure. So he's hell-bent on discovering an original thought, an original idea, through what he calls his governing principles, to see beyond what's there and to distinguish himself in some way. So he's a genius. He drops out of class. He's too busy working on his own theories to even care about the classes that he's in. So he's actually trying to create something. He loses a game to his friend, the same one who's playing classist games with him. He loses a game, it drives him crazy. And so you see that he's sort of a perfectionist. He claims the game is flawed, rather than him.
His ego is already overblown beyond proportions.
It's true, and you do get the sense that his ego is writing checks that his brain can't cash. And so So anyway, he goes to the bar. He can't figure out. He doesn't really know how to speak to women. He just refers to being with a woman as just a fluid exchange. He gets a slap in the face, which maybe he deserves. I don't know. I guess in the 50s.
I think it was a really nice pickup line. I don't know why was she complaining.
Maybe in the 2000s, maybe nowadays. Post-sexual revolution, but then, it's like after World War II, and like everyone's dead, and you're just coming back like, hey, how about some fluid exchange, baby? It's like, maybe you can show a little more class than that.
Yeah, I guess he sees all human relations in this mathematical sense. He tries to figure out what formula can be applied to explain all this behavior.
Yeah, I don't think he figured out that formula. I don't think he proved his formula that night.
Whatever.
With a slap in the face, that's his result. It's time for him to prove himself, and he really digs deep, and he discovers a theory. And this theory just happens to disprove Adam Smith's invisible hand to a certain degree, under certain parameters. So it shows Adam Smith's invisible hand as being somewhat an incomplete thought, at least mathematically, in terms of being proven mathematically. So, he starts to realize that individual ambition can serve the common good. It's true. But then they go out and they are competing for this woman. So,
wait a minute, can you elaborate on that whole Adam Smith thing? How did he disprove? Did he say that there is no invisible hand?
He said there's a caveat to the invisible hand. So not disproving it entirely, just refining it and adding to it and amending it. Okay? So I'll explain. I'll try to explain it. Okay. So the example that they provide is there's several average men and several average women, and there's one hot blonde. Okay, So the question is, what strategically makes the most sense? This is like, in a sense, game theory. It's kind of like game theory, and I think that's what the name of it was overall, at least what it fed into. So the idea is that we block each other, right? And none of us are going to get her if we all try to go for her at once and stumble over ourselves, presumably to get this one girl. And then also none of us will secondarily end up with any of the other girls, any of the other 5 girls, there's 4 or 5 girls that are sitting there. Mm-hmm. So we all try to get the one we want, and then none of us are going to get it, and then all the secondary girls are going to be offended. So he posits that instead of that, no one should go for the blonde, and the 5 average guys, second tier guys, if you could call them, and second tier girls should just go with each other and ignore the blonde, and then strategically everyone is better off as a result. So you don't insult the other girls, and everyone wins, except for the blonde, who's left out.
So the best one loses.
The best one loses. Yeah, the pretty one loses. The first tier loses, which in a sense is a sort of way of subverting classist or just elitist or however you may want to say it thinking. But of course there's probably always going to be one in the group that would try for the blonde anyway, but we won't talk about that. So it's better to do what is best for himself and the group strategically. So the whole idea is that you want to know you have to know strategically what other people are thinking in the group to make this work and to benefit everyone rather than just the individual. An individual going on his own without understanding the strategy that there are people in his group, it doesn't work.
So what does it have to do with the invisible hand?
Because the invisible hand says if you just do whatever you want and follow your own ambition, invisibly, without considering anyone else, you will inadvertently benefit everyone around you. So if you just go out and you're a watchmaker and you go out and say, I'm going to be the best watchmaker I can be, and you go out and do that, I mean, it's very Ayn Randish, this Adam Smith philosophy, the way it's sort of stated, like an individual can go out and just do whatever he wants and he'll be the man, and he'll be elite, and he doesn't need anyone else. To hell with everyone else.
So it's going to be only better for him, not for everybody.
Exactly. So this idea, it actually considers those around you in a like-minded group, in a collectivist group, you could say.
It's actually really funny because he's shown as a anti-communist paranoid person. He really hates communism and Soviet Union.
Right.
And at the same time he has all these socialist ideas.
Yeah, and he proves it mathematically.
So that's what caused his schizophrenia.
You know what? Maybe that is what maybe that kernel is what that chipped him right down the middle.
It's the conflict inside his head.
Hey, he was desperate. He wanted to be distinguished no matter what it took. So at this point, it didn't matter to him how he got there. Okay, as long as he got there. So, do you think it was just dramatic license that he was able to do all this stuff in his mind and computate without algorithmic computation? Just look at a bunch of big board of numbers and decipher the code right then and there?
It's actually really interesting because the real person, John Nash, never worked for Pentagon.
Really? Really?
He was a consultant for some private think tank.
Yeah, right.
And probably that was the closest that was to the thing they showed about the Pentagon. But probably most of the stuff that his thoughts that he worked for the government and he broke codes and he fought communism, it was all part of his delusion.
Right. Wow. See, I wasn't aware of that. I thought maybe he did work for the government in some capacity, and that it was just...
Apparently not.
No? Really? So Big Brother wasn't watching him, actually, and
no, and it was all part of the paranoia.
Oh, really? So...
And all those codes, right? Every time they show him doing the codes, it's all just a bunch of cut newspapers all over his room. Right?
Yeah, right.
It's always connected to his disease.
Right.
It's never part of his whole economic...
right, his economic theory is totally separate. So basically it was just this other fictional world where he mattered beyond his his mathematical achievements.
I guess
This
it's his
world.
romanticized version, that he's the superhero who breaks codes.
Right.
His other part of his
Saves the
genius.
world, and, from communism. So yeah, but they did mention he was at the Wheeler Defense Labs at MIT. I guess that's where he was part of the think tank.
Yeah, I think that's where he was doing all this special project, but mostly he worked in Princeton.
Right. Yes. Right.
The real person, in many aspects, is very different from the one they showed in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
They hid a lot of facts about his life. For example, that he was bisexual.
Mm-hmm.
And he had some kind of gay experiences in university, nothing mentioned about it.
Right.
Another thing that he had another child out of wedlock.
Oh, really? Okay.
Never mentioned. He doesn't have any affairs, nothing.
He never mentioned it to Jennifer Connelly, I guess.
Yeah. He actually, they actually tried to create this artificial guy.
Mm-hmm.
And they just use the name of a real person in order to attract attention to the movie.
Right.
But the actual purpose of this movie is to show people how a schizophrenic person may feel.
Yes.
To raise awareness about schizophrenia, right?
On that level, it worked very well as a film. And I agree with you on that. But, yeah.
The actual Nash, he said he never had any visions. All the schizophrenia was voices.
Really?
And that's how usually it works.
So for film purposes, they had to visualize everything.
Yeah, they had to
give him
visualize it so that people would be more in sync with his craziness.
Right. They couldn't just have voices in the head like that.
It's kind of cheating.
That's a huge dramatic license if you're trying to raise awareness for an issue. To sort of, but I guess the filmmakers have to make things visual, or you're talking about an old a movie with an old feeling, like you're talking about Look Who's Talking or something, where babies are sitting there and just
I think
voiceovers.
The reason they did it is because they wanted to deceive us, like in a Sixth Sense kind of way.
Right.
But with voices, it would be apparent right away that all of this is an illusion.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I think they were probably, given their alternatives, it's probably the best thing they could have done. I think that they just wanted to have one voice for each phase of his life. One where he was sort of a young, struggling man trying to establish himself. They wanted to have some hallucination that represented that time.
Mm-hmm.
And then later, after he had achieved his greatness, a sort of denouement into paranoia, right?
To the whole government agent thing.
Yeah, so
he has the alter ego body.
Right.
He has
so when he's struggling on his
big brother image.
Right.
So what about the little girl though? What's the meaning of the little girl?
I think that was honestly a really lame attempt at giving him more sympathy, rather than anything practical. I mean, it may have represented. That's a good question actually, as to whether or not she arrived before or after he had his first child. It might have represented some feeling he had because he had a daughter, because he did have a baby with Jennifer Connelly at one point. And I don't know if it represents his daughter, like, okay, he's like a sympathetic figure, but if not, if it was before he had a daughter, I think it's just to give him a little extra sympathy, having some little angelic little baby face cherub.
I think
angelic.
It was before. I think it was before he got married.
I thought so
saw
too.
it for the first time, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it was his desire to have children.
Maybe.
That's what brought this image on.
It could be. It could very well be.
But then again, we're just discussing this imaginary character in the movie. It's really annoying when they take a real person and they pretend like that's about him. No, you just use the name of this person to create this completely different character.
This fabrication, this screenwriting fabrication, this structure that they're just going to lay on top of them. Whether it's real or not doesn't matter. I find that in general, you're right, Hollywood does too often take liberties just for dramatic purpose, and I think that I mean, it's like, aren't there enough people in the world with interesting stories? Do we really need to take the few interesting people that there are and try to just embellish even further? Like,
I think the reason is because, well, first of all, sometimes they don't want to present all the facts because the real picture is not that pretty.
right. It's too ugly for some reason.
And
they can't go
sometimes
there.
it's just more complicated because you have 1,000 different things that happen to you, but in 2 hours movie,
Yeah.
they just pick and choose stuff.
I don't
And
mind.
sometimes
yeah.
all they chose
Yeah.
together it doesn't look like it does. It's not self-explanatory.
Right.
So they have to change it and tweak it so it would make more sense as a movie.
Right, they have to structure it. So as we draw closer towards the end of A Beautiful Mind, we realize that he is in fact up for a Nobel Prize, and they come and they give him a little precursory meeting to see if he's going to be able to handle accepting an award, because he was just recently held to be crazy. So they want to make sure he's not going to do anything too crazy if they give him an award. So they bring him into the office, and he realizes that everyone has now given him their full respect, and he's gotten the pens, all the pens that he wanted to get earlier of merit and esteem. So he gets the pens finally. It's a nice moment for him, and then he gets the Nobel Prize in front of everyone, including in front of his delusions.
It's interesting that you mentioned the pens and the Nobel Prize, because I read that the pens ritual is made up. And there's no such ritual in Princeton.
Oh no!
And his big Hollywood speech with the applause
Right.
at Nobel Prize,
Right.
it was also made up. Apparently for economics or for whatever he received his Nobel Prize, they don't have this whole speeches part like in Oscars. They
Really?
just come, they take it, bye. So
Really?
they
I
made
didn't know
up
that.
this whole scene, and it looks so cheesy, so Hollywood in the worst way possible. This whole applause,
Yeah.
and
Right.
this, his struggle, and finally he gets what he deserves.
Oh
In the
man!
end of the movie.
Talk about fishing for an Oscar. They try to even make the guy's award
And
ceremony
when
look
he
like the
speaks
Oscar.
to his wife, that scene is just so cheesy.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I
It's
know.
just a big melted cheese.
It's just too perfect. It's too beautiful for my mind to contain, and that's sad.
In fact, the whole movie, if you look at it, if you analyze the script, you see how calculated everything is. It starts from the as a comedy, right? The university days, the silly pranks that his friends do,
Right.
all very light. And then it switches slowly into romance mode, meeting his wife and everything, the stars, he's showing her the umbrella in the sky. Then he switches into the thriller mode
Right.
with all the spy stuff.
Right.
Then eventually it goes into this whole schizophrenia thing when we already know that he's a schizophrenic.
Then it becomes
right?
a serious. What they used to call them, like an issue picture, or I forget what they used to call them, but yeah, where there's a certain
Like
topic,
subject, topics
a topical,
oriented.
for your information
Yeah.
sort of topic. Yeah.
And then it ends with the perfect drama where he accomplished everything, he
Right.
received the Nobel Prize,
Right.
no one was harmed.
You're right. The script.
It's just
the script.
so
Oh.
very well calculated
You're
for
right,
the
this-
Oscars.
You're right. The script was an Oscar calculation. I completely agree. And you know what? You opened my mind just now to another tissue. And I think that they are connected in a certain way, but I think that you've opened my mind in the sense that the script is contrived in the sense that it's just everything it's doing is sculpturing itself to be Oscar bait.
Everything is directed.
It
There's
is.
no art in here, no soul, nothing. It's all just they took a person's life,
Right.
they took it apart, removed all the unpleasant or questionable issues, and that's what's left. The
Right.
perfect picture.
A perfect,
perfect
roller coaster.
legend.
Yeah, a perfect legend, a roller coaster, and it's total artifice to a certain degree. So let's get to it. Let's get to our tissues now. I'll do mine rather quickly. So the first issue is most definitely for the script and the way it was structured to the Oscar bait in very artificial terms beyond who the real man was. And that was the first issue. The second issue was just wasting Ed Harris in this kind of throwaway role as a hallucination. You didn't need him in the role. You could have hired almost anybody to do this role. Mm-hmm. And that's the second issue, is just these hallucinations. They weren't interesting. If you're going to just waste our time showing us hallucinations that he didn't actually physically see, and if you're going to go so far as to make it this whole new thing that didn't maybe really happen exactly the way it was said to have happened, make them more interesting. Write them as interesting dynamics as part of the story. I mean, I guess the reason they didn't want to overshadow Russell Crowe's excellent performance, which is a really excellent performance, probably the best acting he's ever done in his life. So I can understand why they didn't do it, I suppose, on the one hand, but it just seemed like, well, then why get Ed Harris to do it? Like, why throw away a great actor as fuel to the fire to play him down, just to have him there just to play him down next to Russell Crowe? It just seemed like kind of a waste. So I was disappointed for Ed Harris to have to do this role. So that's all. That's two.
All right. So I'm going to talk about my tissues now. Well, the first one is, like you said, the script. Mm-hmm. I'm with you on that note. Very contrived, very calculated. Also, another tissue I would say for the historical inconsistencies that went too far. They completely created my second tissue. They completely created this new person and used the name of the famous person to get publicity, basically.
Right.
So their original idea of raising awareness about the problems of schizophrenic people and about their existence, I felt kind of a little bit manipulated. I felt like half of the people wouldn't even see this movie if it was about some unknown schizophrenic.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, so we both have two tissues, and it looks like it's a 4-tissue picture here. I'm going to wipe myself down. So I think we nailed it this time. So, A Beautiful Mind. Holy Tissues. Thank you very much for staying with us here again.
One last sentence. He actually, the real John Nash and his wife died in a car accident this May.
Really?
To close the subject completely.
I did not know that. Wow.
I discovered that yesterday.
Jeez. I hope that
he went so quiet. It's just no one no one cared.
I hope he wasn't the one driving the car.
No, it was some taxi cab.
Oh, really? So it's just a total accident. My goodness. Yeah. Well, that's R.I.P. John Nash and significant other. Well, that will wrap up this on a bright note. Oh, that's life.
On a bright note, we can still use his theories and concepts.
That's true. That's true. His work will live on, and the movie will live on in infamy here on Holy Tissues. So here we are, 4 for the road here. See you later.
Ladies and gentlemen, the great John Nash.